What's up, New York Mets fans? Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. It's your boy CP. It is February 7th, 2024. And in this episode, we're going to be talking all about Mark Vientos and Brett Baty, some of their 2024 projections, and why they need to prove to this front office in 2024 that they are the long-term solutions for this organization at their respective positions. Before we get into it, like I said, a highly subjective topic. I'll be posing an overarching question to you all in the tail end of this podcast. So stay tuned and make sure you drop your comments as it pertains to that question down below in the comment section. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you're new here, as you're watching this, bottom right-hand corner, hover over my icon and subscribe if you can do so. I appreciate the support. Tell your friends, tell your family, and you know where to find me on all my social media handles at CPNY Sports. On X, Instagram, they are the same handles as my YouTube handle at CPNY Sports. Without further ado, let's get into it.
The shallow right field, stumbling start for Stewart. It comes up, it's to deep left field by Alvarez, and that's just going 4 straight games for the second time in his. He's home.
All right, let's start off with Mark Vientos here and his 2024 projections. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on what these numbers are versus what I expect versus what we saw in 2023. But nonetheless, I wanted to give you all a little bit of clarity on what the quote unquote experts in terms of the algorithms and the computers and those guys at Fangraphs are projecting. You see two tail of the tapes here as it pertains to the Zips projections versus the Steamer projections, and I color coded them as such. The biggest discrepancy here is obviously the games played, followed by the plate appearances in the Zips projection versus the Steamer projection. Zips projecting Mark Vientos in 2024 at 121 games started, 486 plate appearances, and the rest of the statistics there on your screen to follow in orange. And in contrast, Steamer is projecting Vientos more in that platoon type role, 81 games started, 294 plate appearances, and your respective Steamer statistics right after that as well. And if I had to sort of give my preference on what I want to see, if we are going to accept this internal DH route, which I'm pretty sure myself and all Mets fans that I've been talking to are pretty much ready to see Mark Vientos and are accepting of the writing that's on the wall that this front office is not going to be making any major offensive upgrades to this team between now, February 7th, and the end of this offseason, I want to see Mark Vientos more often than not. I want to get away from the platoon. I want to get away from the matchups, and I want to see Mark Vientos versus righties on the mound and lefties. I understand that this team still has DJ Stewart, and DJ Stewart is going to play. I understand that this team could also go out there and sign a lefty bat like Brandon Belt or Eddie Rosario, which seems a lot less likely, but still a possibility to happen if they want to play that platoon type role in what you see in your projections here for Mark Vientos in blue. But I want to see what's in orange. I want to see him versus both righties and versus lefties. I want to see what he's got because this is his opportunity to showcase himself, not only for us fans, but for this front office in terms of making his case for why he should be the long-term solution at this everlasting DH problem that the Mets have had over the last couple of seasons. I want to see upwards of 500 plate appearances. I want to see if he can hit 20 plus home runs like we all probably think that he can, at least that I think that he can. And if I had to guess, I think he's beating these projections nonetheless. If you've been listening into my podcast, any live streams that I've been appearing on, I think he's going to hit 22 home runs, and I think he has the potential to even get up to 25 this season. Obviously, the batting average is going to be relatively consistent to what you see on your screen, anywhere in the high 230s, low 240s. That is the give or take scenario that you get with a power hitter like Mark Vientos. The OPS, I would like to see go up. I think 750, 760, even 770 is the range I want to see Mark Vientos in the OPS category. But all things remaining consistent, the home runs and the RBIs will follow. But like I said, the reason why I don't want to see this platoon type scenario. And I don't want DJ Stewart or anybody else taking the bulk at bats away from Mark Vientos. Is we don't know what we have in this 24-year-old young power hitter that the Mets currently possess. And going into this offseason, I'll talk about it here in just a second, the Mets are going to have a lot more flexibility in terms of upgrading a position like the DH or even a position like third base when we get into Brett Baty here in just a second. So we need to see the utmost sample size, the absolute maximum workload that these guys can provide over the course of 162. And I'm sorry, it can't just be 81 games because you want to get DJ Stewart at bats as a lefty versus those righty pitchers. Because honestly, in the sparse sample size that we saw out of Vientos in that season in 2023, where he struggled a little bit, whether you want to blame the analytics department or Buck for creating those lineups and putting Vogelbach out there playing the matchups, we actually saw Mark Vientos fare a little bit better in that small sample size versus righty pitchers than he did lefties, which goes a complete 180 against those matchups anyways. Obviously, we all know the stigma behind righty batters having a lot more success, presumably, versus lefty pitchers than righty pitchers. That wasn't the case for Mark Vientos in 2023. And I understand we need a lot more sample size to back that up. And this is exactly why I'm lobbying to see something more along the lines of what we see here for Zips than we see in the steamer category as it pertains to the projections. Now, projections are only projections at the end of the day. I can sit here and give my projections. Steamer can sit up here and give their projections, but it's up to Mark Vientos ultimately to grasp this opportunity, because above all else, we know that he's going to be getting more of an opportunity than he did last season. And that's what matters. How much more still remains to be seen. But I want the Mets, I want David Stearns, and I want Carlos Mendoza, whoever makes the lineups, to maximize the workload for Mark Vientos in 2024. If that's the reason why we didn't sign an external DH, even to a one-year deal, this offseason is because we want to see what we have in Mark Vientos, then stick to that narrative. Let's see what he's got. And the same situation applies here for Brett Baty. The same situation here applies. Now, the latest rumor, I'm not going to get too much into it, is that the Mets have some interest, some level of interest in Gio Urshela, presumably for that backup type role at third base if Brett Baty goes down due to an unexpected injury or he just flat out stinks in terms of plugging Gio Urshela in there and giving him some competition. But I want to see what Brett Baty has in 2024, because in my mind, both of these guys, as unfair as it is, given their lack of opportunities thus far in their young careers, are in a position right now where it's do or die time for them in terms of proving that they are the answer at both DH for Mark Vientos and third base for Brett Baty. Now, unfortunately, with what I've seen from Brett Baty, I don't think he's anything more than what these projections here have him to be. And you see a little bit of a discrepancy here in terms of the sample size that we're going to be seeing in 2024 regardless. He only appeared in 108 games last season. Steamer only has him here at 104 games versus Zips's 124 games. 20-game discrepancy and about 103 plate appearance discrepancy here for Brett Baty. But nonetheless, the batting average is relatively consistent. The 2 home runs discrepancies here between the two projections. The OBP looks a little similar. But that OPS is where you see the largest discrepancy here. Now, like I said, I'm not expecting Brett Baty to put balls over the wall. He's never going to be a 20 to 25 home run hitter in this league. He hit 9 last season, 8 of them being off of righty pitchers, which screams to me, and also looking at his splits in terms of the batting average, that he fares a lot better versus righty pitchers than he does lefty pitchers. But nonetheless, same situation applies here in my mind. I don't want to play this platoon game, whether it's with an external option coming in like Gio Urshela, or whether it's Joey Wendell, who's probably going to be on the Mets' bench, I don't want to play that platoon game with Brett Baty. This is his last opportunity, just like presumably it's Mark Vientos' last opportunity to prove themselves that they are the solution, especially for Brett Baty at third base. So these are your projections for both of these guys. Now, I wanted to get into this episode a little bit more in terms of the subjectivity of it. And I posed this question in our Mets Hot Stove live stream yesterday or 2 days ago on February 5th. And I asked this also on my X account. You can see at the bottom of your screen here at CPNY Sports. Make sure you go ahead and check that post out. I posed the question. I posted a clip of the Mets Hot Stove Live, and I asked everybody, what does success and a successful season for both of these guys, Vientos and Baty, look like to you all? Now, my question on X was just solely due to Mark Vientos, and that it was just Mark Vientos that I was talking about in the context of that question. But I'm opening it up on this podcast episode to both Mark Vientos and to Brett Baty. But you see, I got some feedback here as it pertains to Mark Vientos, right? We can all assume that the Mets have a lot more flexibility after this 2024 season in terms of going out there and getting that DH bat if they deem it necessary and Mark Vientos doesn't prove himself. But what does proving himself mean? What is our definition as fans? And what is the Mets' definition statistically and metrics-wise of proving yourself to be and being capable of that long-term solution? That's where I think I haven't seen much discourse amongst Mets fans on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, wherever. I haven't seen defined metrics of what is acceptable out of these guys versus what's not. And I got a little bit of feedback, which I'm happy. People were receptive to this idea because I think the common consensus here is that although these guys are probably going to be getting bulk workloads in 2024, with the guys that the Mets have coming up, right? Jet Williams, Luis Angel Acuna, Drew Gilbert, coupled with the fact that the Mets are going to be flexible in terms of the payroll finally and resetting that luxury tax in 2025 and beyond in terms of getting that premier bat in the free agent market or via trade, whatever means they decide to do it by. These guys are not locks for the 2025 season unless they prove otherwise in 2024. So here are some answers that I got on my X account as replies to the question that I posted, specifically as it applies to Mark Vientos. And I guess I'm going to clip this right here. I'm going to clip this podcast episode. What is success defined by metrics-wise for Brett Baty as well? I'm going to clip that on Twitter, and I want to get some replies out of it, just as I did here for Mark Vientos. But here, people have sounded off, and they gave their opinions, which is what I was hoping for. I love it. It's great. I love the interaction. I love the discourse. And I apologize for missing that quotation in the second quotation on someone's answer. But nonetheless, these are all subjective opinions, by the way. None of these are my opinions. These are straight from people, my followers on X, and that saw the post and replied. None of these are my opinions, but I wanted to sort of give you all, as viewers here on YouTube, what people in this fan base are thinking and what their definition of success for Mark Vientos is this upcoming season in 2024 as it pertains to being confident that he could be that long-term solution. Because right now, Mark Vientos is a wild card. We all know that. Okay, starting from the top down, this person says he has to hit over 250 in terms of the batting average and over 20 home runs. That is that respective person's opinion on what they want to see out of Mark Vientos to let them be confident in him being that long-term solution. And I kept all these answers anonymous, right? I kept all these answers anonymous. Shout out to you if you are one of these people. that are listening in on this podcast episode. Shout out to you if you provided your answer. I thoroughly appreciate it, but I'm not going to, put anyone's out there if you don't want it to be. So these are all anonymous. Next person here in blue says, with 500 at-bats, going back to those projections, that's right around what Zips has for Mark Vientos in those 480-something plate appearances that we just went over. 28 home runs, 80 RBIs, and a 240 batting average, 330 on-base percentage, and 480 slugging percentage? I apologize. I don't have my glasses here. I wish I did, but I don't. That is the slash line that they want to see out of Mark Vientos in 2024 to give them confidence. Next person, 20 to 25 home runs with an OPS of 750 plus in his first year as starter, as a starting DH, would give me confidence in him moving forward as that DH solution. So going line by line here, you can read off what people are thinking for Mark Vientos and what their expectations are from Mark Vientos. And we need to start thinking about how we define success in these wild card players. Not only Mark Vientos, but Brett Baty as well. Same situation applies. Both of these guys are unproven for one reason or another. They haven't gotten a bulk sample size to their names yet in their MLB careers. And we're going to see exactly what they're made of this season. So we need to go into this season as fans and as the front office and put minimum expectations on them. That's how I view it. That is how I view it. There needs to be minimum expectations for what you want out of your DH or what you want out of your everyday starting third baseman. And this is obviously easier said than done in terms of projections for the offensive side of the ball. This isn't even getting into the defensive side of the ball, which also plays a very large role in terms of Brett Baty being capable of handling third base duties every day for the foreseeable future in 2025 and beyond. And I'm not going to even talk about Mark Vientos at third base and being that sort of third base candidate alongside Brett Baty, because I just don't see that happening. I don't think we see many games at all out of Mark Vientos in third base, but I could be wrong. And I know people might disagree with me in that aspect. So these are what the people think of how they would define success for Mark Vientos going into 2024. This is where I want to challenge you all as the viewers. How would you, as the viewers of this video, define a successful season for both Brett Baty and Mark Vientos in 2024 in the terms of making their case to stick around in 2025 and beyond? Because honestly, this is the overarching concept that I've been sort of, I guess, spewing. This is the take that I've had all offseason, especially when the writing's been on the wall that we're going internal for DH. And obviously, I always expected Brett Baty to be that starter and getting one more crack at it here in 2024. For both of these guys, these are showcase seasons because I think the Mets do have a definition of what success looks like and what sort of production they are looking for from these guys. The Mets front office knows. We just don't know exactly what the true definition is, but they have their definition. Don't make no mistake about it. If these players don't live up to that expectation, I'm sorry, with the flexibility that the Mets have in 2025 in that offseason, when a lot of money comes off the books and they have the opportunity to go back out there and go after those free agents without worrying about that crushing luxury tax hit. If these guys don't perform in 2024, these guys are going to be the first ones out the door. Because I promise you, Drew Gilbert's going to get his opportunity. Luis Angel Acuna is going to get his opportunity. Jet Williams is going to get his opportunity. Not to even mention the other guys you have coming up in Ryan Clifford. All these guys internally It's already a struggle to find positions for them, but they're going to get their opportunity. If they're not traded, they're going to get their opportunity. But they can't if these guys are log jamming the roster. So these guys are going to be the first ones out the door. This is why 2024 is so crucial for Brett Baty and Mark Vientos, because it's going to have the utmost impact on their future Mets tenure. And we need to start talking about these guys as we inch closer to this 2024 season, as opening day is just around the corner. We need to set defined metrics on what success means when we talk about these players. I hope that all makes sense. So like I said, I'm posing this to you all. Hit the comment section down below. What statistics, what metrics would be successes for both of these guys on your screen? Brett Baty and Mark Vientos. You can talk about average. You could talk about OPS. You could talk about home runs. You can even talk about defensive metrics. But I want numbers. I want metrics, and not just talking about their potential or their skill set. I want actual metrics, because I want to be able to sit here after the 2024 season and look at this podcast episode and the projections that we just went over here at the beginning of this episode versus what they actually produced. And I want to be able to comfortably sit there and say, oh, they definitely outperformed that. They did what it took. Or in contrast, they didn't get the job done. It's time to move on. You understand what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense. Hit the comment section down below. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like what you heard. I like to take unique approaches to talking about this team. I love talking about what ifs, and I can talk about what ifs all day. But as we get here closer to the season, it's going to be time to talk about, are they doing it versus are they not doing it? And that's where the numbers come into play. And that's why I want to start talking numbers. You can find me on X, Instagram, YouTube. All of my handles are at CPNY Sports. Like I said, I know this is a little bit more ranting toward the tail end. This is a very subjective podcast episode. I know Brett Baty can be a great player in his career. I know Mark Vientos has that power to be a great hitter in this league and be a DH somewhere. But with the way the Mets are set up right now, there's a logjam on the roster. And it just so happens that these two guys are the first roadblock to unjamming all that's going on with this Mets organization in terms of the lineup. This is where it starts, and this is where it will continue if they prove themselves, or this is where it will end if they don't, come the 2025 offseason. These two guys, all eyes are on them. All right, I appreciate everyone watching. Thank you so much. Like I said, let's have a discussion down below. I appreciate it. Make sure you hit the description down below as well. I'll toss some links in there. Check out all the latest Mets content on my channel. It's been your boy CP. It's been another episode of the True Mets Talk podcast. I'll be back again this week, hopefully with another True Mets Talk podcast episode. Maybe if we get some more concrete news, maybe a surprise signing, but we'll definitely be on live on Friday, the Interstate Mets Report. Stay tuned to that. It's your boy CP. I'm out. Peace. Thank you for watching the latest episode of the CP New York Sports Pod. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit that thumbs up, comment your thoughts and opinions, and use the lower right-hand button of this video to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.